Good evening and welcome to the 2017 Maryland District U12 ODP Parents Meeting. My name is Gandalf French and I am the MSYSA Programs Director, and one of those programs that I am in charge of is the Olympic Developmental Program. Before we get started, I just want to tell you congratulations to all of the players that have been selected so far for the program. We're really excited to get this program off the ground and running, and we're really looking forward to getting out on the fields and working with you.
Hi everyone, my name is Allison Haley and I'm the Programs Administrator for MSYSA. I'm also the Site Administrator for the South District ODP District, and I'm very excited to have you all here.
This is a live stream, but there is a few second delay, and part of the process that we're looking to do is not only have you watch the live stream through the video box on the District ODP page, but also you can ask any questions as we progress through the slideshow, and Allison will read them out loud if it's something that pertains to the full program. If it's something that is just centric to your player, please feel free to contact us via email or via the office number, and both can be found on the website. So what is ODP? It is the most common question that we get. ODP stands for the Olympic Developmental Program. And that program has several rungs to that particular ladder, and the entry level being the District ODP. The goal of the program is to identify players, to develop players, and to promote players. That will obviously be getting into a little bit more depth for each of those items as the night goes on. As you saw on that previous slide, we do have a bit of an agenda tonight. We're going to talk about the program goals. We're going to talk a little bit about the health and safety of the elite player, as well as the injury-free partnership that we have with MSYSA and MedStar Health, and then a little bit about the expectations and logistics for the program itself. As you can see here on this slide, we exist right here in this red box. This is the Identification Development Program, which is designed to promote players to the regional and national level and is run by the U.S. Youth Soccer, falling under the Youth Council of the Federation. The U.S. Soccer Federation has split our country into 4 regions. We exist in Region 1, indicated here by the blue states. Region 1 is 15 states that go from Virginia all the way up to the state of Maine. For the full program on the state ODP, our players do participate in inter-regional events where we play against teams from the other states at those regional events. For the 12U program at the state level, what that would look like is an inter-site play day that would emulate sort of the full program and help us focus more on purely the developmental side of the game for these players. U.S. Soccer and the Olympic Developmental Program has 4 rungs to our ladder. This part of our program is on the district level, and where we're looking to promote these players onto the state, the region, and the national team level. One of the benefits of our program is at each one of these levels, the curriculum that we have in place, the coaching staff that we have in place is solely focused on those program goals. After they identify the players, we're really looking to help develop them. If you compare that to a lot of the club-based models that exist in the soccer landscape today, it is beneficial to these players to have more of a developmental aspect of the game focused on by the coaches, as opposed to necessarily winning tournaments, trophies, or got soccer points. None of that exists in the Olympic Developmental Program specifically because it's just not part of our program. It's not part of our program goals. We do recognize that there are other identification programs that exist, but without those middle rungs, you either exist in the national team system or you do not. Again, program goals: identification, development, and promotion of players. The very first stage of the district ODP program is identifying the players at the open tryout selection process. All of the players that have been selected this far have been notified. However, that identification process will remain open as the season progresses. The goal of this is simply to find players that exhibit the qualities that we're looking for, to be able to have them brought into the player pool as the season progresses and allow them the benefit of the development through the program with the experienced coaches and staff. Each one of those rungs on that ODP ladder will have a focus through the curriculum based on a system of play. As I'm sure most of us have heard, the U.S. national teams have based their system of play on the 4-3-3, with obviously changes existing based on who they're playing against or what the goal for that particular match is. The district, state, and regional level of ODP is no different. We will be training those players that are selected to the pools under the system of play for the 4-3-3, with some focus on the positional system and how it relates to different systems that other teams may be using against us. There's 4 basic areas of improvement that we're looking to focus on through the season. Those areas are the technical, the tactical, the physical, and the psychological pillars. And that's something that we look at when we're identifying players for the program, as well as when we're developing the curriculum and how it focuses on the players. One of the benefits of our program is that we do have health and safety advisors. One of those health and safety advisors is Dr. Stacy King. She has recommended that we use this as an opportunity to educate some parents more completely on concussions and how those concussions can affect the elite player. So I'm just going to go over a couple slides that were prepared by her in order to help raise awareness on what concussions are, what the symptoms of a concussion is, and really how it can impact the player's health and safety. We don't anticipate, obviously, any concussions through the ODP system, but in the event that there is one, it's important that not only are the staff educated, which they are, it's not only important that we have a medical professional on site, which we do in the form of an athletic trainer, but it is important that parents are able to recognize the signs and symptoms of concussions as well. According to the CDC, a concussion is a traumatic brain injury caused by a bump, blow, or jolt to the head or to the body that causes the head and brain to move back and forth rapidly inside the skull. This sudden movement can cause the brain to bounce or twist, stretching and damaging brain cells and creating chemical changes in the brain. In soccer, concussions most commonly occur by the following contacts: head to elbow, head to ground, or head to goalpost. Head-to-ball concussions rarely happen. One of the reasons why this is important to recognize is all of these things happen frequently in a full contact environment, which soccer is. And so it is up to us as adults and as educators of these young players to make sure that we're really keeping an eye out for the signs and symptoms as they may occur. Oftentimes players don't even know that there's anything wrong, and so making sure that we're keeping an eye out for these symptoms is incredibly important. Some signs that you can observe of a player immediately prior or after a hit or fall: they appear dazed or stunned. They forget instructions or confused about an assignment or a position. Sometimes they can forget which direction they're going on the field or just look around in a confused manner. Also, there could be some physical attributes that have changed. The player could be moving clumsily. They could be slightly off balance. Maybe their touch isn't as good as it normally would. When you ask them questions, the answers might be different or not happen in the same sort of, alacrity that a player would normally exhibit when discussing things. They can show mood, behavior, or personality changes. All of these things also, it's important to note, won't be necessarily immediately apparent. They could show up later in the evening as the player energy level is changing. And so it's really important that as parents and educators, we're keeping an eye out for these kinds of symptoms and signs after the fact. Immediate things that can be seen: they could have headache or pressure inside their head, any kind of nausea, vomiting, balance or dizziness. Obviously, we've all heard that they can be sensitive to light. One of the other things that's not common in terms of knowledge about concussions is recognizing that players can just feel sluggish, foggy, or groggy. They can have a little bit of confusion or they just kind of feel down. So it's really important to keep an eye out for these signs and symptoms. When in doubt, always sit a player out. It's absolutely not worth any kind of long-term damage at all. If you have any kind of doubt at all, please seek medical attention. It is in fact Maryland law that any athlete who is even suspected of sustaining a concussion during practice or play must be promptly removed from the game and cannot return to play until he or she has been cleared by a licensed healthcare professional who's trained in the management of concussions. This applies, by the way, to concussions that may or may not have been received at training or the game for our program. Meaning if a player is known to have had a concussion on the playground or have had a concussion playing lacrosse or some other sport, it's important to recognize that we will not allow them to return to play as parents and educators and staff because it's not in their best interest. Players, obviously, especially at this age, are not familiar with the balance between what's best for themselves short and long term. They just want to play, and it's incredibly important that we keep an eye out for them in that process. One of the ways that we have sort of taken steps to make sure that players are safe in the short and long term is a partnership with MedStar Health and Injure Free. And we're incredibly excited to have this partnership now going into its second year. What this partnership means is that all players in the ODP system have direct access to sports professionals at any time through a dedicated 1-800 number, and that allows them to get seen by sports medicine professionals much quicker than they would be normally. Once those players have been seen by the medical sports professional, they will have a return to play plan put in place that is designed not only to help them return to play quicker, but also in a more complete and healthy way for long-term player development. Parents would provide us with any paperwork that is given to them by the sports professionals, and then they can be cleared in the injury-free system, which would update the coaches and athletic trainers at the site as well. A little bit of information about MedStar Health. One of the reasons we're so excited to be partnering with them in this program is they obviously have quite a lot of experience. They're one of the largest health professionals on the East Coast, and specifically most of their focus obviously is in sports medicine. They have quite a large staff, and it enables them to see ODP players much quicker following an injury or suspected injury than you might necessarily be able to have otherwise. They work at all levels of the game. We're a good example of the youth level. They also have collegiate and professional level, not just in soccer, in other sports as well. In terms of how this is really going to impact you and your participation in this program, it does have VIP scheduling to make sure that you're able to get your player to be seen by a sports professional in a much shorter turnaround time. That's not necessarily limited to any injuries or suspected injuries that happen at an ODP event. It could be something that happens at your club game. It is a benefit of our program that extends to your child's participation in sports outside of ODP. I'm going to take a pause for just 1 second and remind everybody that you are able to write in any questions that you may have as we're going through the slideshow. It's incredibly important that any questions you have, we're able to answer it, and that can happen in the chat box that's lower down on the screen on the district ODP site. A little bit about player expectations through the season. One of the first things is these players are representing their district and the state of Maryland, as well as US Youth Soccer. Anytime they are stepping out on the field and putting on their uniform, it's important to recognize that they're representing something larger than themselves. We expect that they show respect for the members of the program, the community at large, and really interact with the community and with each other in a way that shows sportsmanship and shows the respect for all players in the sport and the game itself. We want to make sure that the players are showing up on time to training. They're bringing a ball and water to every training session, wearing their ODP kit to the training session. Those jerseys will be being delivered directly to a training session. Initially, we had anticipated that they would be available for the first ODP session, which will be tomorrow, August 14th. Unfortunately, due to the rescheduling of quite a few of the sites due to the weather during the tryout process, those jerseys will not be available until later in August. As soon as we know they will be delivered, we will be notifying all of the families and the coaches. But until that time, please continue to wear the tryout shirt to the training sessions. When those jerseys are delivered, make sure that you're ready for that transition. Attending all training sessions and working to become the best player as possible is a very obvious player expectation, but we do recognize that with the timing of the training sessions, this is summer and players and parents alike are in and out of town, and our curriculum is structured in a way that players will receive the full benefit of the program and the development through the sessions, whether they're at every week or not. It is still strongly encouraged that they attend as many as possible, and that helps facilitate meaningful training and enables the coaches to have a much more direct impact on those players in the long-term player development model. A little bit about parent expectations for the season. You are also representing the state of Maryland and US Youth Soccer, and it goes without saying that showing respect for the members of the program and the community is incredibly important. You do everything you can to have your player to training on time, but it is understood that we do live in the real world and things happen. Flat tires happen, traffic happens, and we understand that. Please make sure though that in the event that you are running late for a training session, that when you do arrive, that your player integrates themselves with that training session as seamlessly as possible. I'm going to turn this over to Allison briefly as she has a question from the website.
So this question was asked, will each player need to register for state ODP tryouts, or are they automatically registered after making the district ODP?
The process as it exists is designed to enable all of the players that are in the district program the opportunity to try out at the state ID day. One of the reasons why it is done that way is we wanted to eliminate some of the tryout tryout bias that has occurred at any tryout for any program in the past. It's known that at any given tryout, a player could show up with a rolled ankle or show up with, they could be sick. And one of the benefits of doing the district program, in addition to bringing some of the training closer to each of your sites around the state, is it allows us to have an idea of your player over 7 weeks of training, as opposed to just coming out on that state ID day as was done in the past. And what that means is that all of the players that are in the district training program are signed up automatically for the state ID day. They will be receiving a time block that will allow them to come out and participate at that state ID day against players of similar quality and ability from each of the training sites around the state. The way that we ensure that happens is through each of the 7 training sessions. The coaches will be evaluating the players in much the same way that they were evaluated at the initial tryout, and we'll be keeping some notes and some comments on those players to help us sort them into the state ID day training blocks. On that ID day, what will happen is when those players come out and check in, much as they did for the district tryouts, we will then have those players participate in a brief training session, followed by a game situation where the players on each field are rotating and playing 9v9 matches against each other. I'm going to turn it back over to Allison again, because we have another question.
Oh, we actually have several that just came in, but this one was first. Do we need to inform someone if our player will not be able to make a training session? If so, who? And you should definitely let your coach know whether or not you'll be able to make it, just so he or she knows to plan for you not being there.
And I would like to piggyback on that slightly. For notification in person, I highly recommend, and it is strongly encouraged, that that process takes place from the player to the coach directly. It is expected further down the parent expectations that the parents are not allowed in the field during training, and it's one of the benefits of our program that we encourage direct communication from the players to the coaches, because we feel it helps really build a stronger relationship between the two, as well as encourages a little bit more responsibility and maturity among the players as well.
And we have one more question, because that one answered 2 of the questions that we had. But this viewer asked, will a roster with contact information be provided for each district to help with carpool coordination?
That's a great question. So absolutely anybody who has an interest in carpooling should send an email directly to Allison, and her email address is available under the staff directory on our website. And in that email, just indicate what district you're from, indicate your player's name, best contact information, and roughly where it is you would look to be carpooling from or to. And the reason we do it that way is so that I'm not sending out a bunch of emails to everybody, and we'll take that information and we'll post it on the district pool page. Most of us have already been to the district pool page, and you've seen that there's it's separated by each of the 8 districts, and what that would look like in the future is underneath each of those there will be a link that says that these are the people who are interested in carpooling from that district. Any other questions?
That's it for right now.
Fantastic. Keep them coming. Back to the parent expectations. I was mentioning that we want to make sure that we have respect not only for the program, respect for the staff, and respect for each other. Making sure that when we are arriving late, because it will happen, that the player is able to integrate seamlessly with the practice. As we all know, there is a warm-up period that happens at the beginning of every training session, and the coaches will indicate what that should be to the players at some of the first sessions, and then after that, the players will really look to do that on their own. Once that happens, the parents' role and expectations at the training is really just observe and support, and maybe even cheer your players on. But for the most part, we actually ask that, as I mentioned before, they're not allowed on the field during training sessions, and that we really let the players interact with the coaches and each other in an environment that does not include parents' involvement much at all. Meaning, don't go out on the field, maybe don't shout instructions to your player, allow them really the experience of the program and in its totality. I believe we have another question.
You actually just answered that one. It was parents are not allowed on the field, but can we sit on the sidelines and watch?
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Please do. Show support. And another one actually just came in. What do we need to bring paperwork to the first session tomorrow?
And I will actually be addressing that question just a bit later when we get into some of the logistics. So I'm going to move forward because so far most of the questions that we've been getting are a little bit or more focused on the logistics. And so we're just going to move ahead in the slideshow to see if I can answer some of those before they come in. So as you know, each of you was selected for one of the districts across the state. And as you can see here, this is the overall map of the state with the goal, again, of the program being to bring some of this programming closer to, some of the areas of the state that may not have been receiving the benefit of the ODP program in the past, simply because of the time and monetary reasons for travel as it exists from further out in the state as compared to some of the central areas. A little bit of logistics about the training sessions. Players are expected, again, as I mentioned before, to arrive a bit early. Very, very strongly encouraged that they begin to, get engaged from the moment they're there, moving around, getting themselves in the right mindset. Once they are dropped off, again, parents are not coming out on the field. Players are encouraged to go out on the field, and get focused and get started. The coaches are coming to each of these training sessions prepared based on a curriculum that was written within the U.S. Soccer Player Guidelines for this age group specifically, with the goal of helping develop these players into the future, preparing them for the 13, the 14, and the 15, for example, age groups, and the information that these players really need to have to succeed at those age groups as well. As I mentioned before, through the training sessions, the players will be evaluated. And again, it's not in a very overt way. The coaches are not, going out and scoring the players and asking them to do particular things to watch and catch them doing things. It's really taking a look again back at those 4 pillars of player development that any player and any coach, need to be aware of. The physical, the tactical, the technical, and the psychological. As we mentioned before, players are going to have the opportunity to try out for state ODP. It's important to note that the state ODP program is more involved. The 7 training sessions designed to help prepare the players for the state. The state program will not start actually until next spring. So we're identifying the players this fall at the end of October, as Allison mentioned, the 21st and 22nd, and we'll be bringing them out in March, and they will participate in trainings from March all the way through June, with the play day occurring at the end of June.
If your child tried out in one district but has players from their league at a different district, can they move districts?
So again, one of the goals of the districts is to bring programming closer to each of these players. And so if one district is more convenient for these players than another, then absolutely. What that would look like is we would need to receive an email. You can send it either to myself or to Allison, and we'll facilitate that change between the districts. What we look to avoid is having players just change districts. That is absolutely not okay to do without discussing with us first, because there are logistical considerations that we need to make, for example, the delivery of the jerseys and the player rosters and the coaches' preparation for these training sessions. So we ask that if you are interested in changing districts, that you reach out to us directly through an email, or you can also obviously call us during business hours at the office as well.
And we have 2 more questions. One I believe we addressed already, but you may or may not have just gotten onto the webcast. Should they wear the tryout shirt tomorrow, or is any outfit okay since the uniforms are not in yet? Definitely wear your tryout shirt tomorrow. The uniform should be in hopefully by the end of August, if not early September. And the second question, are all district ODP players guaranteed a tryout for state ODP, or do the coaches advise if a player should not come to state ODP tryouts?
We would strongly encourage that all players that are participating in the districts try out for the state program. All players are afforded a position at the state ID Day, and it is an incredibly important experience for a lot of these young players to go to that kind of environment and see some of these players from around the state. For example, the central area is Central West is very different from Central East. The style of play in the clubs that exist there is very different. It's also very different from the North District. It's very different from the Southeast and the other Eastern Shore districts. So bringing all these players together and having them participate in training and tryouts together is a fantastic experience for these players. It allows them to experience another style of play, allows them to experience the game in a whole new way. And I apologize that I didn't mention this previously, but I'm just going to go ahead and piggyback on this. That's one of the great benefits of the ODP program in general, allowing these players to come out and experience the game of soccer in a new way. The best way I like to describe it is soccer to me is like a game of chess. There's a set number of outcomes from each individual move, from each individual interaction between players, and allowing these players to see and experience the game in a new way really gives them the benefit of that library of experiences, so that in the future, when presented with a new experience or maybe the same experience in a different way, they're able to solve that particular problem just a little bit faster. And so that's certainly one of the benefits of the program. And so we do strongly encourage that all players come out to the tryouts for the state program. Even if they don't make it, it is an excellent experience for those players for long-term development. And to highlight that, I'm sure we've all heard, or many of us have heard, Michael Jordan is one of the all-time greatest, if not the all-time greatest basketball player ever, and he didn't make his high school team. It's absolutely not known what the catalyst will be for any player's individual development. We know a lot of things that work. We know a lot of things that don't. And so having these players have a mixture of success and failure is certainly best for them in the long term. Having them only succeed is not as valuable to them in the long term. So definitely bring your player out, and they will all definitely have a time slot that is available to them for the state trainings.
This one just came in. You said parents are not permitted on the field, but are any of the coaches parents too?
Yes, we actually do have, I believe, 3 parents that are assistant coaches to state coaches that are working at the district level. I don't believe any of those parents are coaching their player, and each of those parents was actually selected before any of the tryouts happened, obviously, simply because on their merit, their licensing, on their coaching experience, as well as obviously during that process we called recommendations. Myself and our director of player development, Willie Ibarra, spent quite a bit of time ensuring that each of the coaches that were selected for our program were going to really do a great job working with these kids, regardless of if their player was ultimately selected or not. So in the event that there is a player whose parent happens to be coaching either in another gender or maybe at another site, obviously as a coach that person is allowed on the field. So back to a little bit of logistics. Obviously, beginning tomorrow, we're going to be having our trainings on Monday nights. Those trainings will last just about 90 minutes. Because it is a 90-minute session, and because oftentimes at each of these locations we do have other programs that may be on before or after us on the field, we do ask obviously that our coaches are very punctual with the training, and therefore we ask that the parents are as well. None of the coaches will obviously be leaving any players. So for example, if you ran out to the grocery store and you came back and you're running late coming back, the coaches are absolutely not going to leave until all of the players have been picked up at the training site. We want to make sure that going through the process of the trainings, the focus is on the tactical and the technical training as it relates to our program curriculum. We're going to be focusing on this age, obviously, on the technical and small group tactics as it relates to the full-sided game. These players in this age group are still playing 9v9, but we'll be training them in positionally specific roles as it relates to the full-sided game at 11v11. I'm going to turn it over to Allison because it looks like we have another question.
Actually, we have 3. The first one, is there a fee to participate in the state ID day? Actually, $50 from the fee that you pay to participate in District ODP goes towards your child's participation in the state ID day for the state ODP tryouts.
We built into the fees for the program the costs associated with running the state ID day for the 12U program, meaning the field rentals, making sure we have athletic trainers there, the coaches. We built that cost into the district program cost already. So there's no additional fees for anybody who is in the districts coming out to the state. And I will also point out, because I have mentioned this a few times in emails on the website as well, players that are not in the district program are actually not eligible for trying out at the state ID day. So only players that were in the district program will be at the state ID day, with the exception of any medical waivers. For example, and fortunately it hasn't happened at this age group, but last year at the 15s, we had a player who had, for example, like a torn ACL or was out long-term on a severe concussion. Any of those kind of players that missed the open tryout session and the supplemental tryout window for the district program would be able to try out at the state ID day at that time. But otherwise, no players are eligible to try out that have not participated in the district trainings.
And we have 3 more. The first one is, what happens if you can't make the October 22nd state tryouts? Is there an alternate date?
That's a fantastic question. So as I mentioned earlier, one of the benefits of the way that this program is structured is that we will be evaluating these players across the 7 weeks of tryouts. 7 weeks of training, rather. And the benefit of that is we have a really complete idea of where they are at the beginning of the season, where they are by the end of the season, and it gives us an idea of who they are as a player. So coming into the state ID day, all of that information about the player will actually be averaged into sort of the profile of the player as it pertains to the state selections. Meaning, for example, if a player is injured or sick at the state ID day and is unable to participate, we would then base their selection for the state pool on their participation in the district trainings. It's one of the reasons why only district players are eligible to participate at the state ID day.
Are the ODP tryouts by age 06, 07 due to age and height differences in age?
ODP has a program from the district to the national level, is age group restricted, meaning at the 13U for this year, for example, that would be 05 players only, so players born in the year 2005. There's various reasons, tactically, and in terms of player development, why this is the case. But across the program, all of the age groups are restricted to a single year, birth year for the players, with the exception of the 12U program. It is recognized that the differences between an 11U and a 12U player and what they need to be learning and working on is not as great as that between a 12 and a 13 or a 13 and a 14. And so we include those players, for example, this year, the 2007 and the 2006s, in that age group. For the district and for the state day, ID day, we do not select a certain percentage of players. So for example, if at the state ID day, for the girls side, for example, we have 200 players that come out, and 50 of them are 2007s, that has no impact whatsoever for the coaches selecting them. The coaches don't know their ages. The coaches are simply looking at how they're participating in the particular training or competition and scoring them based on how they're playing at that time. Ultimately, we're looking to select just about 100 girls and 100 boys. I'm sorry, I should clarify, 90 to 100 for each gender, and traditionally that's out of close to 400 players across the program.
Where do we find our district coaches' contact information?
And that's a great question. So for the district and for the states, we actually don't publish the coach's contact information. There's a lot of reasons why that's the case, but the most obvious one is across program-wide, we have several thousand players who try out, and having all of them reaching out to the coaches can be, long story short, overwhelming. And I know that because they all reach out to me instead. So being able to manage the logistics and answer the questions that those parents and players may have is something that's much more suited to our office and our staff to handle. And then we obviously pass along any information that needs to be sent to the coaches. But we just ask that, in general, the players communicate with the coaches at the fields, and any parents that have any questions, they can either reach out to us at the office, or, for example, Allison as the site administrator for the Southeast, for the South, rather, as a site administrator for the South, you could ask her some questions at those training sessions as well.
Okay, and last one for right now. How many players will make the roster for the state team? I believe you just answered this.
I did. So it's not a team. It's a pool, and it's important to recognize the difference in those two words. A team is something that happens at the club level, and we are a very different program from any club-centric models. A player pool allows for a much wider range of competition without having the same kind of stress that a team necessarily would. Meaning, For example, at the 13U age group, we take just about 60 players for that age group, and ultimately through about 17 trainings, we look to narrow that pool down to 3 teams by the end of that training cycle. For the 12U state program, we're looking to take, again, just about 90 to 100 players, and those will be split between 3 training sites that are centrally located, and you can see that on the state ODP pool page as well.
Will the 2006 players currently participating in the state ODP, the players who were selected last year, be participating in the district training also, or will they be able to just try out at the state level in October?
That's a good question. At every age for the ODP program, all players are required to try out every year, and there's a lot of very obvious reasons for that. Players develop at different rates. Just don't work as consistently as each other through that time frame from year to year. So for the 2006 players that participated at the state 12U program last year, they will also still have to try out for, be accepted to, and train with the district ODP program in order to be eligible for the state 12U program this year.
Last one, if the coach information isn't posted and if a player cannot make it tomorrow, who are we supposed to contact?
Great question. So you can reach out to us at the office directly, or if in the event if this is happening in the future, you can also have your player speak directly to the coach the week ahead of time. Obviously, being the first training session, that's not possible, so just send Allison or myself an email at the office at your convenience. All right, so I'm going to get back to the logistics a little bit. As I mentioned before, we're focusing a lot on the small group training and tactics for these players that are age appropriate. Each site and gender will have a head coach and assistant coaches as necessary based on the number of players that are at the site. We try to keep a ratio for the players that is reasonable and allows them to receive a little bit more individual focus through the season. Goalkeepers will also receive goalkeeper-specific training every week at the regularly scheduled training location and time. And what that looks like is those goalkeeper coaches will work with them for a technical warm-up and a little bit of a technical session that is associated with the curriculum that the rest of the program is working on, and then they would reintegrate with the rest of the pool, and the goalkeeper coaches will continue to work with them within that environment on things that are more tactically related to the session that evening. A couple of things about our website. Mentioned earlier, you can see more information that pertains to each of the pools on the pool pages, and what that means is if there's information specifically, for example, for Allison's district for the South, that will be posted immediately under the South section of the pool page, and that could range from things such as specific reschedule information, or maybe, as I mentioned earlier, the carpool information, and that allows us to have a little bit of information for individual districts that is not necessarily pertaining to the entire program. For the training, all the schedules are current on our training schedule section of the website. Any changes that happened that are program-wide or specific to an individual district, we'll obviously reach out to everybody through the email, but just in case, for example, our email goes to your spam folder, I do encourage all parents and my coaches as well to continue to check the training schedules on a regular basis for any changes that might occur. We had a question earlier about forms and bringing them out to the training sessions. All of our forms are actually stored in electronic version, meaning when you complete your acceptance profile and you fill out all of the information there, it auto-populates the forms as needed, and electronic signatures are captured, and that means that I have access to it, and in the event of, for example, an athletic trainer, they have access to information as needed on the field, and obviously it's stored in a password-protected format as well. In terms of any cancellations, any program-wide cancellations will occur by 3 p.m. on the day of training. Those will be posted underneath the ODP weather cancellation tab on the website. Anything after that time, it will be up to the judgment of the site head coach and or athletic trainer to cancel any of the individual districts if any unsafe situations are occurring. For example, lightning that may be popping up because it is summertime, as we experienced with some of the tryouts. Obviously, it was very different from site to site across the state, and we'll do our best to cancel those by 3, but if not, after 3 p.m., it will be up to the site head coach or trainer at an individual location. If you take a look at the overall calendar for the season, it does indicate obviously the 7 training sessions, and then immediately following that, the state ID day. If you want to take a look at the state calendar to give you an idea of the overall year, that information is available under the state ODP pool page, and it gives you a bit more of an overview of the season for the state and how it relates directly back to the district trainings. I'm excited to be able to say that our staff this year is all highly licensed coaches with a lot of experience, and it's one of the additional benefits of our program is that by having staff in place that has the experience and has the licensing and has a different level of experience or even just area of experience than from what some of your players are experiencing at the club level, it allows these players to have a different experience at ODP than they would at their club, and then they take that experience back to the club and it enables them to see and hear and experience things from their club coaches in a new way. Again, we mentioned this and touched on it a couple times through the evening, the information flow. Basically, parents, please communicate with the site administrator if they're on site, or you can communicate directly with me or Allison through the office. I want to highlight at this time, though, that I do not check my emails over the weekend. So if it is something that you need addressed, please send it to me in an email. I will get to it ASAP on Monday morning, but don't look for an email answered after business hours. I'm a club coach as well, and I have to sort of balance the time between the two, because if I was always answering emails for ODP, I would never get anything else done. So at this time, I want to mention that if you tuned in late to this video, or maybe there's something that was answered, through the process that you might have missed the answer to, this video will be posted on our website after this evening. It will be available for you to view there. If you have any questions for us, after this evening, you can always reach out to us at the office number or either of our emails that are both listed on the website under msysa.org and then under staff directory. Otherwise, I can't tell you how excited we are to be having our inaugural district ODP program beginning tomorrow, and I'm really looking forward to seeing and meeting each of you out at one of the district sites, or if I don't get to see you there, I look forward to seeing you at the state ID day. Thank you.